Welcome to our UCLA Extension Department of Business, Management, and Legal Programs video lecture series on entrepreneurship, new venture formation, and strategic business plan development. The video that you are about to watch is an introduction and instructions on how to come up with your startup funding needs to launch your business. I'm Harry Redinger, your instructor. There are a total of over 40 videos in this lecture series that integrates with our UCLA Extension online course management program, Canvas. Each video strives to be brief and will have a little overlap with other videos to tie our curriculum together. Okay, let's get started. Our first slide that we have up here just kind of wants to profile a little bit of all the planning work that goes into coming up with a cost, what it's going to take to start our business. At this point in our curriculum, we're transitioning out of the realm of theory, concepts, mission statements, vision statements, and now we're going into the realm of the entrepreneurship, business planning, business model development, of estimating how much is it going to cost to get this started, how much is it going to cost to initiate this business. And, and if we don't have a lot of experience in an industry, boy, this can be a really complex number to come up with. This experience is everything. If you're in a business and you've got 10, 20 years in an industry, you just kind of know. You might not even spend any time with it. You just know I need to have $50,000, or because you already have startup market connections and clients. But if you don't, you might have to spend an awful lot of time and money to get enough clientele up and going to initiate the business in a way that survives, the ups and downs of the startup process. So this whole section here is going to deal with how to break the concept of your organization's business model down into bite-sized pieces and put a price on it, just the same way that a contractor would estimate a set of drawings for a building that's going to be built. So this is the area of the business plan, entrepreneurship, new venture formation development process that deals with coming up with our funding needs. How much money has to go out before we start to have money coming back in, revenue, and hopefully break even and make a profit. So little humor here. Where do we start the estimating process? Okay. And so a good mindset to have going into this whole process of coming up with our funding needs is that of a builder building a building, and then just kind of looking at the business. What are we going to need first, second, third? So, logically, the first phase of starting a business is business setup, and that means office equipment, that means websites, that means brochures, that means Facebook accounts, LinkedIn accounts. This means insurance. It means, depending on the industry, the list can go on and on and on and on and on. And truly, this is where experience goes through. Now, if you've developed a complete and comprehensive set of mechanical sections, you've got a step ahead of the game. You've been studying precisely what it's going to take to bring life to each department of the organization, just like assembling organs within the body and then bringing life to a living organism. So here, and I've got, just to kind of pop this mental mindset concept across, first you got to pour concrete to have a foundation. Second, you got to build a frame. Third, you got to apply roof on the frame so everything doesn't get wet. So again, this is just kind of like dumb logic, but in your business, in your industry, so for instance, if you're a restaurant, Well, you've got to find a location, and then you've got to work with the health department and an architect to design a kitchen and restaurant, and then get a building permit and a health department permit, and all the necessary certifications for food handling and things of that sort. And then you have to build the restaurant, and then you have to do marketing, and then have grand opening procedures, and cross your fingers, hope you survive, and you get enough customers. And then then 3 or 4 months down the road to see if you have return, because with restaurants, successful restaurants, 90% of the customers are return customers, so they have some kind of emotional connection with the food, the product, the service. Because there's much that goes into this. This is all a part of the whole product service branding, which we've had many talks on already, and developing a marketing mix and testing our market analysis theories, and so much goes into this cost, and most businesses don't have enough money here, or enough contingency, or enough time to survive for the market incubation process to have a flow of customers so that you can make payroll and overhead and a minimum profit margin on a regular monthly basis. So our first starting place is our organizational structure, our mechanical sections. And so this here is going to outline what we're going to need and when we're going to need it. So needless to say, phase 1 is going to probably be something that has to do with business startup operations, setup operations, and now we drill down in each one, from administration to marketing and sales, manufacturing, accounting, bookkeeping, human resources, all the things that we're going to need to initiate the startup of this business. And again, have the mentality of a general contractor, where we're estimating, breaking things down into units. Let's say we don't plan on having any real income come in for 3 months, and so we have to finance employee salaries, a payroll burden, insurances, and things of that sort for 3 months. And we find a figure, if we catch, then we've made it. If not, we fold. And so we have to have enough money to get through that 3-month period so we can make payroll. And so this is all a matter of the estimating process. And here's where we come back to our phases of competitive development worksheet. But in this case, we're using it as an estimating template. So now when we come in and we write, all of our tasks and objectives to perform, to build each department per each phase. Now we're going to translate those bullet words into dollars, an estimate, a breakdown. And in essence, what we're doing, and here's a neat little graph. So, a wave, how much money's got to go out before an ebb, the money starts to flow back into land. And there's a number of techniques that we use, and I'm going to put one up here, and this is called a critical path method, CPM, or a bar chart. These are scheduling techniques. And this gives us an idea of how much money we're going to need when we're going to need it. Now, the critical path method scheduling is a really, really sophisticated method of project management scheduling, and we can cost load the activities, and computers are used much in doing this. And when developing this, there's quite a nasty learning curve on how to work with a CPM computer program, but they can tell you exactly how much money is going to be going out at any one given time per the schedule you put into it, the logical arrow diagram schedule. And in business, that's probably overkill. More of this is just experience, and so to be more realistic, a bar chart type thing in terms of what we're going to be spending at any one phase of the business startup operations is probably adequate. Again, can't emphasize enough that really what counts here is experience. And if we don't have it, how can we get experience on board, a mentor, an advisory board, or go and work within the industry for a while before you start. Like, for instance, if you were going to start a food truck service, can you get a job working on a food truck for a while? Invaluable type experience before you actually go into business. So anyway, it's being aware of how much money you're going to need and when you're going to need it, and is going to be key to the whole estimating process here. Now, this is an expanded CPM diagram here, but my objective from an instructor standpoint is, and let me back up for a second. I'm going to back up to this the CPM site here. So you see all these red dots? The red dot symbolizes an instantaneous moment in time. The arrow represents an activity. It takes time and it costs money. So they can represent contracts, labor, employees, outsourcing. But there's time, materials, quality, cost, and time associated with all the arrows. And so the concept here is all the arrows going into a red dot have to be complete before the arrow leaving the red dot can take off. The red dots are called events. And so we use this technique to estimate how long it's going to take and what is the critical path. What path through this network of activities is going to take the most amount of time. And so anything that affects that path is the whole project is going to take that amount of time. And then activities that fall on paths that aren't critical have what we call float time. So if something on that activity takes a day longer, then it's not a big deal because we have float there. So when we take this concept and apply it to this particular slide, our phase one business setup schedule of events, the very first cluster of events there deal with everything that would go on before you lease the office, okay? So if you look between event 4 and 5, because once you lease the office, you don't want to be spending money on a lease and then be setting up file cabinets. You want to have everything to move in and be ready to go to take advantage of that office location. So you want to make a list of all the things you want to have done that's going to take your time and interest. So when you lease the office, you're utilizing that space realistically. You're putting it to work. You've hired an employee, and employee's doing something. Whereas beforehand, you don't perhaps want an employee showing up at your home or something like that. And so from lease the office from activity 5 to activity 6 are all the things that go on to set up the office, such as tenant improvement, file cabinets, computers, office furnishings, all those kinds of things. And once that's done, then we have hire and train marketing staff, activate marketing and sales operations, begin building out each of the functional departments of the organization. So that gives you kind of an idea of just all the tasks that are going on. And when you really start thinking about what it takes to get like a restaurant off the ground, or whether it's or a manufacturing plant, and just the real estate development, and then all the bureaucracy that goes in terms of permits and inspectors and taxes and certifications and licenses, it can be really mind-boggling. So it's not until you start kind of outlining all the tasks that has to be completed before you can before you complete all the tasks going into an event, before you can start the next set of tasks. So this particular type of scheduling technique really brings alive what the heck you're getting into. And with experience, you just know it. But without the experience, each one of these are potentially very complex Rubik's Cubes kind of things to figure out in order to get the business off the ground. So again, and also what's really cool, by the way, if you do form an advisory board, if you are doing this with a team of people, being able to delegate the startup funding needs to your colleagues who are going to be the lead, the leadership of these functional divisions, boy, that makes it a lot easier. And then you got people, dialogue, checks and balances. Does everybody agree? Do we have enough money here to do this? And so forming an advisory board or finding someone who's at a point in life where they're retired and they're actually looking forward to mentoring someone, and so if you have a mentor and an advisory board, that really takes a lot of the guesswork out of this. And even if the person perhaps doesn't have a lot of experience, just another set of eyes and ears and a bright brain to go, well, how much toilet paper do you think we need, or matches? Because I jokingly say in these videos, when you develop your operational mechanics, which are all the things you're going to need to get the business off the ground, it's kind of like, going camping. You don't want to forget the matches and the toilet paper. So by the same tokens, you got the matches and toilet paper in the budget, because if you don't, you realize you need it, and it's something that's big enough that cracks the budget, breaks the bank, you got a big problem. So going back and forth in terms of the needs of all your mechanical sections is pretty important here. So anyway, start with your organizational structure, and that comes from all your your mechanical sections. And now we're going to come in and take each box on the organizational structure: administration, research and development, manufacturing, startup, customer service, warehouse, and we're going to come up with a budget price for what each department needs in terms of how to form that department, because if we put enough brain work into it, those departments represent everything you're going to need to manage this company on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, year-to-year type basis. And this is what has to be spent to bring life to the business, to kickstart it. So in this case, we came up with an amount of $280,000. Now the question is that enough? And in most cases, often it's not. So you want to be, you want to have a contingency amount. But if you have someone who's got experience, they can say, oh, that's plenty. And you got plenty of contingency in there too. Now, if you don't have the money, sometimes it's good to have a line of credit or a bank that's ready to, or a financial resource that's ready to step in and back you up if you need a little more just to get over the hump. Granted, that looks like the business is going to take. I want to point out a little bit here that the definition of economics is the study of scarcity. No matter how big your business is, you do not have unlimited resources for any one function of the business. You've got to, even if you're General Motors, you have to put so much money in each category in order to manage your money well and have a healthy profit margin. And that's what the creative picture I have up there, scarcity, meaning the pond is drying up, the water is evaporating. So with the minimum resources you have, how can you start this business? If you have unlimited, well, you've got it made. If you have a rich uncle or something. But for most of us, we have minimum resources or a credit card, even worse, to start our business with. So with the minimum resources we have, and sometimes it's just sweat equity, our own hands, that's all we got. And enough to go out and buy some business cards and try to find someone to hire us. And this makes me think of a Will Rogers quote. Figure out what you do best and what you love to do, and then find someone who'll pay you for just being yourself. Anyway, so keep this in mind, scarcity. It's kind of like if you're stranded on a desert island, how can you save yourself with a six-pack of beer and an LA Times kind of thing? I mean, start and a book of matches. So we're going to talk about MacGyver in just a second, but sometimes it takes an immense amount of creativity on how you're going to start a company with minimum to no resources. And so the whole study of scarcity is just something entrepreneurs are really, really good at. Because if you're determined to make it happen, it's amazing what you can do with a few bucks. when we do estimating, we're going to be working with Microsoft Excel, no doubt, or the Apple program Numbers. But we're going to be dealing with adding up, making tables and adding up columns, and we're going to spend a lot of time doing spreadsheet stuff. It's an essential aspect of being an entrepreneur, is working with a spreadsheet program. And while we're on the subject matter, you're no doubt going to be working with a word processing program, possibly graphic programs, photography programs, accounting, QuickBooks, Microsoft PowerPoint for presentations, a database program, website development programs, a lot of technology. It's just how things happen these days. And so I want to share with you a website called Lynda.com. I personally have achieved almost an intermediate level with a wide range of, from website design to graphics to editing videos. And Lynda.com is probably, for like $24 a month, you have unlimited access to all their instruction videos. And they have instructional videos for Excel, for PowerPoint, for all the major Adobe, Microsoft, financial management programs in the marketplace. Kind of amazing. And so they get top-notch instructors, and it's broken down into like 10, not to exceed like 10-minute segments. Not like these videos. These videos are symbolic of sitting in a class for a classroom lecture at UCLA. So, but these videos are just little bite size. So they get your attention span just right, and then you can watch the cursor and click and see how it's done. But I encourage you to look into Lynda.com, opening an account, and then learning the basics of Excel or whatever program you need. But you absolutely have to be able to work with Excel to do cash flow projections and financial management work. I also want to call your attention to this concept that I brought up at the beginning of our market analysis section, our industry analysis section, or our market analysis section. And this is the whole concept of doing a titration, which is a chemical process that we can, a laboratory type process we do to measure what the point of supersaturation within a liquid. And if we have a liquid that has, let's say, alcohol in it, and we know the volume of liquid, we can drop a chemical in it and then count the number of drops going in, and then look up on a chart that at what point does the color go from the liquid go from clear to, in this case, like a purplish type red color, and then you can count up the number of drops per the volume and say, oh my gosh, it's 25 or 40% alcohol. So that's its point of supersaturation. Well, it's kind of a neat analogy, because when you're studying a business, you want to study the funding needs until you reach a point of supersaturation where you just got it. You just know. You don't have to. Life doesn't come with an instruction manual. You got to figure things out. So when you get to the point where you really understand the cost of every little detail that goes in to get things going with a certain amount of contingency, and so that's what you're working towards. So before you start writing up your funding needs section and outlining the numbers and building the spreadsheet, you want to get to the point where you have a sense of supersaturation. I'm sick and tired of these numbers, and I'm ready. I'm going to pull the trigger and kind of add this stuff up and complete this process. I also want to touch base a little bit here with what I call MacGyver Ingenuity. Now, so for those of you who don't know, MacGyver was a TV program back in the 70s, and there's a relaunch of it in 2017. There's a new relaunch series called MacGyver, and MacGyver's this like MIT smart physics scientist type guy that's just genius at taking just a few fundamental little things like a need some wire and some bubble gum and some matches, and next thing you know, things are blowing up. You can get out of complex situations with just a few odds and ends that he finds laying around, and can make a chemical reaction or a tool, a device, and save the day. So here's a very creative, picture where you got some guys in this little dinghy boat that looks like a cannon, and maybe it's a fake facade or something, but it's kind of symbolic of just being ingenious. How do we give a front of being a battleship, and we're really this little itty bitty dinghy with oars? Well, when you go into business, sometimes we have to have a whole lot of MacGyver ingenuity on how we're going to, get a major corporation off the ground with $2,000 or something like that. And so, and where and how are you going to spend that money to find the resources and to get it to build from there? It's absolutely amazing in terms of some of many entrepreneurial success stories, how people got a $2,000 loan and bought a few items here and there, and next thing you know, they've got a growing, thriving corporation on their hand. And the history of the world has just numerous stories like that. And is it luck, or did somebody really work and train for it? And the reality is, most businesses, success is a choice. They rehearse the plan over and over and over again. And so when they got that $2,000, they knew exactly where to spend it to parlay into something that now it's $4,000, now it's $8,000. Now I've got enough to go to the bank and apply for a loan for $50,000. I can reinvest that, and if we're going to reinvest it, what are we going to put the money into? Marketing or more equipment? And so, it's with the research and knowledge of the industry to know where to put the money to keep that growing process going. So, you don't put the money in real expensive, fancy equipment and not marketing, and then all of a sudden you're sitting there in a building with this fancy equipment, but no clients to hire you to use the equipment. So you don't want that to happen either. But just keep in the back of your mind, sometimes a lot of ingenuity needs to go into how we're going to spend the scarce resources to get the business off the ground. Boy, oh boy, forming an advisory board is just taps the experience of others. It really does make a big difference. And you don't feel like you're alone so much, because being an entrepreneur can be a really lonely experience. So by having an advisory board to help question and give feedback, especially people who are critical thinkers, the thinker preference people, but as well as the feeling preference people, in terms of how to deal with your psychological needs as you go through this process, and how you work and identify the human resources you need. If you study, the more you study psychological type and temperament, to get a business off the ground really takes all four of the temperaments. The rationalist, the idealist, the guardian, and the artisan. All types play a role in all temperament types play a role in getting a business off the ground. Also, be really well aware of the whole SWOT analysis from the standpoint of taking your startup funding budget and needs, and then studying the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities relevant to startup funding to our strategy, our alternative strategy A, B, and C. And the reason, now we have several videos on developing competitive strategy, but this is particularly going to be found in the strategic planning process and the case study process, and probably a few others. But the video on strategic planning and case study goes over this in great detail. So you can apply the strategic planning process to the funding needs objective to come up with what do we need and how are we going to get this either money, or how are we going to get people to participate in providing a line of credit or resources to help us get us off the ground. The reason why I've been an athlete my entire life, and I often take a look at business and entrepreneurship as breaking things down to something you practice over and over and over and over time. And the more we practice and rehearse over and over and over again, just like an athlete gets the laps in, practices the playbook over and over again. When we prepare ourselves for real-time management decisions, we just do it. We don't think about it. And so this is something that does not show up in the startup funding worksheet. But because when you get things going, when all of a sudden an opportunity shows up that wasn't even in your plan, you got to know what you're looking at. You got to go, wait a minute, let's put the brakes on here. Let's go that way, because that will parlay into these other opportunities and is a faster and quicker path to success and sustainability than the current plan we're on. But if we don't practice, we're not aware of it, we might not see it. So as we look at our competitive strategy and practice it over and over again, and now we're in a phase where we're trying to put a price on what's it going to take to make this happen. Now we got to rethink things, because when it comes to surviving the startup process, how can we trigger growth within the business with a minimum amount of funding? And that's the big question that needs to be answered and discovered, how you're going to do that, and where those resources are going to come from. And so there's some form of correlation here in terms of an athlete training for competition and an entrepreneur training for competition also. This wraps up our little talk on how to develop our startup funding. And again, this is experience, but you just have to start someplace. You just got to start putting numbers down, and a bit of it standing back and scratching your ass or your head and going, is this enough? But more importantly, seek the validation and approval of other people on your plan and your funding needs. Don't do this alone. Find a mentor. Assemble an advisory board. Assemble a group of friends and family advisors to help you validate and verify that you can probably get this off the ground with the resources that you have outlined in this process to do just that. Anyway, to that note, we'll see you at our next video lecture.